Hey guys, everything new on the sun here. I've got a really neat creation update for you, and it's about unicorns. Now, the Bible does refer to unicorns as being real creatures that lived, well, long ago, longer than probably before Christ, and at least in the Garden of Eden and during the time of the flood, probably. And in Numbers 23:22, it says, God brought them out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. Numbers 24:8. He brought him forth out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. He shall eat up the nations with his enemies, and shall break their bones, and pierce them through with his arrows. And Deuteronomy 33:17. His glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of a unicorn. And it goes on. Job speaks of unicorns. Job 39. And even in Psalm 22:21, save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorns. And it goes on into Isaiah, another verse in Psalms. So the Bible speaks of unicorns. The Bible knew unicorns were there before science figured it out. I'm going to look at two articles here. One, and they're about the same fossil, basically. This one is from CNN. So this is a CNN. I don't think this is the breaking news itself, but the name of it is Real Siberian Unicorn Remains Found. And it goes into the details of the unicorn and some interesting things that they found. But I want to look at another article. This is, again, about the same fossil. This is from ScienceAlert.com. You can see it up in the URL, ScienceAlert.com. A fossilized skull has revealed when the last Siberian unicorn lived on Earth. And hint, science is realizing that it didn't, it lived on Earth a shorter time ago than they originally figured. For decades, scientists have estimated the Siberian unicorn, a long-extinct species of mammal that looked more like a rhino than a horse, died out some 350,000 years ago. But a beautifully preserved skull from Kazakstan has completely overturned that assumption. Here you have science figuring out that science was wrong in the first place. Turns out these incredible creatures were still around as recently as 29,000 years ago. And the date's going in the correct direction. We'll recognize that, indeed, they were around less than 6,000 years ago. So if science can figure out that they lived not only 350,000 years ago, which is a bogus date, but also as recently as 29,000, they need to deflate their time scales there and recognize that unicorns were around less than 6,000 years, and the Bible has been speaking of this for a long time. It's nothing new to people who read their Bible. Before we talk about the latest discovery, yes, there was a very real unicorn that roamed the earth tens of thousands of years ago, probably less than 6,000, but it was nothing like the one found in your favorite children's book. Sorry, it's a bummer for us too. The article says the real unicorn, and I won't Sibericum, I won't read that, was shaggy and huge and looked just like a modern rhino. It only carried the most almighty horn. Only it carried the most almighty horn on its forehead. Now the Bible does speak of the strength of it. It doesn't necessarily speak of it, that it was like a horse exactly. I guess from the verses that we read. I don't think it says a lot about exactly what it looks like. Although you could probably read into some of this and kind of follow up on some of these chapters here, get more detail about it, but it may indeed be more like a rhino and less like a horse. I don't know. The point is, it exists. The real unicorn, oh yeah, I just read that, and only it carried a most almighty horn on its head, and that does agree with the Bible, because the Bible says the unicorn was a very strong creature. According to early descriptions, the Siberian unicorn stood roughly 2 meters tall, was 4.5 meters long, and weighed 4 tons. That's closer to woolly mammoth size than horse size, despite its very impressive stature. Now, I would suggest that this is pre-flood, then probably horses were also 4 tons, because we know lots of animals got to very large sizes. Even humans were very large size before and after the flood. The Bible speaks of giants. So the fact that this is a big fossil doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't look like a horse, although I'm not suggesting emphatically that it does look like a horse. I don't know. Point is, the size doesn't really tell you much, because it was pre-flood, with the hyperbaric chamber, elevated oxygen level atmosphere. You could have some very big animals, and that's what the dinosaurs were. They were big reptiles. They were big lizards. So if you want a correct image in your head, think of a fuzzy rhinoceros with one long slender horn protruding from its face instead of a short stubby one like today's rhinos. The newly found skull was remarkably well preserved, was found in Pavlodar region of Kazakstan. Well preserved means it was buried rapidly so that it could not decay or be eaten or broken or whatever, knocked over, rot away in the sun. And that means that a cataclysmic event had to come along and cover it, and that was the flood. That would have been the flood. Researchers from Tomsk State University were able to date it to around 29,000 years via radiocarbon dating, and we know that radiocarbon dating is skewed by water, for example. Based on the size and condition of the skull, it was likely a very old male, they suggest, but how it actually died remains unknown. The question on researchers' minds is how the unicorn lasted so much longer than those that died out thousands of years earlier. And the truth is that there were probably a lot of them around that same time. We just haven't found any yet. Maybe there wasn't as many, so finding a few of them may be harder than finding some animals that were more plentiful at the time. Most likely the south of western Siberia was a refugium, where this rhino preserved the longest in comparison with the rest of its range. It speaks of migrating. Knowing how the species survived so long, potentially what wiped it out in the end, could allow us to make informed choices about the future of our own species. As we find ourselves in a rather perilous situation. So I'll make a guess, a prediction via the theory of creation. I'll predict that he died by drowning, and maybe it was because of the flood. I'll put it out there. It could be not, but I'll put that out there and see if they figure that out when the next article comes out. So proof that the Bible is accurate everywhere, it's in everything it speaks about, and this is one more example of how creation is true, and science slowly comes around to that fact. But fascinating stuff. A unicorn found, and the Bible spoke of it. The Bible knew this well before science figured it out. So if you doubt the Bible, there's no reason to doubt the Bible. Science is just slow in catching up with things. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and stay tuned as I bring up more videos on creation, evolution, and the evidence for creation, and how evolution is basically a big lie, so that man can be his own God, and really a lie from Satan to distract people away from the truth and the glory of God and His awesome creation.